Companies around the world are making environmental pledges, but can and will they deliver them? Take Shell, for example, one of the biggest oil companies in the world. Its boss insists they're on course to halve their own emissions over the next decade. He's been speaking to our business editor, Simon Jack, at the company's biggest oil refinery in the Netherlands.
20 million tonnes of oil a year flow through Pernis, the largest refinery in Europe. Globally, Shell has a carbon footprint the size of Russia's.
What you see here is predominantly refinery. There's a bit of
Chief Executive Ben van Beurden said Shell's transition to net zero is possible, but it will need the money from its oil and gas business for many years to pay for it.
This facility is going to be transformed. We will produce biofuels, where we will produce hydrogen over the horizon. All these things can only be done if you actually have a facility to work with, but also if you have the cash to invest with it. And that cash at this point in time comes from our legacy business.
But it's not all legacy. Shell wants to develop a new oil field at Cambo in the North Sea. How does he justify that?
So to just say, let's not get oil and gas demands from our own resources, that are probably the most advantaged resources, but let's import it from somewhere else, probably with a larger carbon footprint. I don't think that is going to contribute, of course, not to the balance of payments of the country, but also not to the carbon footprint of the world.
Shell plans to spend 4 times as much on oil and gas as on renewables next year, which is why some doubt it can obey a Dutch court order to halve its net emissions by 2030 and eliminate them by 2050.
Even if you are very generous and assume they get all the amounts of carbon capture and storage and offsets that they need, they might just miss their 2030 targets and they will not be able to deliver on 2050. In fact, they will be increasing emissions till 2030 and still be producing a significant amount of emissions in 2050.
Van Beurden insists Shell's own emissions are on track.
Compared to 2016, which is our reference year, we have reduced emissions already with 17%. And we are on track to get to minus 50% by 2030. That is just going to be measured, it's going to be put in scorecards, and part of my bonus is going to be dependent on us meeting that.
Remember, these targets don't include emissions from customers using Shell products. That's 90% of the total footprint.
This gigantic oil refinery is changing to make less carbon-intensive products. Now, that won't be good or fast enough for some people. We'd probably like to see it shut down tomorrow. But our lives are still very much entwined with industries like this. And in fact, if you have a pension, you own shares in Shell and BP. But there are those who think we should be withdrawing our financial backing for industries like this.
But just selling up and walking away would be a mistake, according to the world's biggest money manager.
We can't have that dialogue with companies if we're not invested in them. By being invested in the companies, we have that seat at the table, we engage with them. We can't divest from the world.
As powerful as Shell is, customers may be more powerful. As long as there's demand for fossil fuels, Shell or someone else will supply it. Simon Jack, BBC News, Rotterdam.